colleague stole my position, and now I get to watch her struggle worse than I ever did. I'm a teacher at a fairly affluent public school. For the most part, I love my job. I've made genuine friends among the staff, and the students make the hard work worth it. Of course, there are the negative parts of teaching that everyone hears about: low pay, grading outside of contract hours, and so on. Still, overall, the deal has been good. A few years ago, my former boss recognized me as a potential leader in the building. He emphasized that I was very data-oriented and well-liked among my colleagues. I'm comfortable using Google Sheets and Excel to collect and organize student data, and I'm very strong with parent communication. I was hesitant at first, but eventually I agreed and became a leader for a group of teachers and students. My responsibilities included organizing meetings and overseeing overall student success. Shortly after that, my old boss left, and I was left with a new administrator whom I didn't know very well. This is where things started to get messy. I have a sensory processing disorder and mild hearing loss. It's difficult to explain, but sometimes I genuinely do not hear things correctly. For example, if someone says, "I'm going to pick up Stacy," I might hear something like, "I'm gone, just wait and see." This happens at least once a day and usually isn't a big deal. Unfortunately, it isn't curable, but I manage. In meetings with my new boss, she pushed strategies that focused on students whose state test scores were just below passing. The idea was to support all students while giving extra attention to those who were close to the cutoff. These initiatives were never written down, which I later realized was likely because the legality of such practices is questionable at best. Whenever these ideas were shared with me, I would follow up after meetings and ask her to repeat herself, then check my notes to make sure I had understood correctly. I noticed that she became passively frustrated by this, even though I had explained my hearing disorder. Looking back, I wonder if she felt pressured because she knew what we were doing was not entirely appropriate, and if that caused her to form a negative impression of me. Now I need to introduce the main character of this story, whom I'll call Tenny, since she is the coach of the tennis team. Tenny is well liked by staff due to her many years of service to the community in a particular area. I liked her as well and thought she would be a great team member. However, like my boss, Tenny became repeatedly frustrated when I missed things she said, especially in crowded high school hallways. Sometimes she would shout something at me while walking past. This led to many misunderstandings and mistakes. I repeatedly asked her to pause, make sure I understood, or simply email me. Nothing changed. There were at least 5 or 6 significant moments where my hearing needs were not accommodated, even though a simple email would have solved the issue. For example, one day my new boss came into the hallway to announce that an assembly location had been changed. We were supposed to take students to a new location instead of the usual one. I heard that there was a change, but I did not hear the new location. Tenny was the only person nearby. I tapped my ear, which I usually do to indicate that I did not hear something, and asked where we were going. Tenny responded quickly and walked away, and once again, I did not understand. As a result, my students and I arrived at the assembly 5 minutes late after walking around the building in confusion. When my boss asked what happened, I told her plainly that I hadn't heard the instructions correctly. Weeks later, I was called into a meeting with my new boss. She told me that I was being removed from my leadership position due to inconsistency and disrespect toward colleagues. I asked which colleagues she was referring to, and she said that information was private. I asked how I had been disrespectful, and she said that sometimes you get frustrated and tap your ear when you say you can't hear things. I explained that tapping my ear is an ASL sign meaning here, as in I can't hear you. She said I should have communicated that. I reminded her that I had repeatedly asked for written communication. She responded that I should not always expect it. At that point, I knew it was a losing battle. Any explanation I gave would be dismissed. I love the school and the community, and fighting the new administration would only create more problems. So I wasn't surprised when a school-wide email announced that Tenny was taking over the leadership position. Colleagues praised her in multiple reply-all emails, which was incredibly frustrating. I knew she had complained about me, and it was bitter to see her rewarded for it. Then the next school year began. Tenny came into my classroom and asked for the student data sheets I had created in Google Sheets. I told her, honestly, that even if I shared them, she wouldn't be able to use them effectively. I showed her my computer, explained the formulas I used, and demonstrated how they needed to be adjusted whenever a new student or section was added. She then asked if I could continue updating the sheets even though I no longer held the leadership position. I told her, as professionally as possible, that I would be happy to teach her how to do it, but I would need a stipend. She asked whether any other leaders were doing this work. I told her they were not. I was the only one and always had been. I'm slightly ashamed to admit that I felt a sense of satisfaction watching her expression go cold as she realized I would not fold, and that her only options were to spend hours each year managing data or become proficient with Google Sheets and Excel, something I knew she was unlikely to do. And then there were the parents. 99% of parents are a joy to work with. I truly mean that. It's rewarding to collaborate with the parents of students I care so deeply about. But the 1% can make your life miserable. I've overheard Tenny complaining about spending 45 minutes on the phone with a difficult parent, losing all of her grading time. A call like that would have taken me 5 minutes at most, because I know how to stop circular arguments and get parents on my side. What used to take me minutes now takes Tenny hours. Yes, she's receiving my $1,500 annual stipend, but I no longer deal with extra meetings, extra parent calls, or constant miscommunication. She has inherited all of the stress I once carried, and more. I feel guilty admitting how much satisfaction I get from this, but Tenny made my life miserable in a place I otherwise loved. Enjoy it, Tenny. Final update: it's been a full semester, so I figured it was time for an update. To say that things have been going well for me would be an understatement. As many commenters pointed out, the $1,500 yearly stipend was not worth it. The mental load that disappeared when I lost the leadership role was enormous. I feel lighter, happier, and more present. I've been able to redirect my time and energy into community projects, and I genuinely feel like a better teacher. I haven't taken work home once this semester. Tenny, on the other hand, has been miserable. She is consistently one of the last teachers to leave the building, even during her coaching off-season, and she frequently cancels or forgets meetings. Unsurprisingly, she has not been considerate of my hearing accommodations, which are now officially registered with the district. I keep my own meeting notes and review them with a trusted colleague afterward to check for misunderstandings. I usually find that I missed one or two details. Recently, my boss held a staff-wide meeting and introduced a shared meeting document and calendar system for all teams. Tenny was visibly frustrated by this, despite the fact that this is exactly what I had been doing as a leader and is honestly just a standard workplace practice. After I posted my original story, a trusted colleague told me that Tenny and 2 other teachers had complained to administration about my lack of preparation and inconsistencies. Since learning this, I've kept interactions with those 2 teachers strictly professional. I remain friendly and polite, pretending I don't know they threw me under the bus. One of them, whom I'll call Ben, teaches the same subject as Tenny and me, middle school English. Anyone familiar with education knows that English is one of the most heavily tested subjects. Our school is extremely focused on state test scores, like many schools in the U.S., so we put significant effort into improving them. Because I now had extra time and energy, I decided to focus intensely on strategies to improve my students' test performance. Higher scores give students more opportunities in high school, so it was a win for everyone. I researched new strategies, implemented proven practices, and fully committed to the process. The results paid off. At an all-staff meeting, my boss announced that our grade level had scored higher in English than in previous years, a 20% overall increase. Then she added, "Be sure to check your students' individual scores to see how you contributed to the increase." The room went silent. My students were the primary reason for the increase. Tenny's and Ben's students scored slightly lower than the previous year. My boss later congratulated me privately, and my performance review scores were the highest of my career. She even asked if I would share my strategies with Tenny and Ben. I agreed, as collaboration like this is common in teaching, but I shared only the documents. Nothing more. Neither of them has asked for additional help, and I prefer it that way. The final twist? Due to budget cuts, the leadership position is being eliminated next school year and the teams are being dissolved. Tenny went through all of that stress and drama for a single year in the role. I'm doing my best not to dwell on it. I'm focusing on my own growth, my students, and the 95% of colleagues who genuinely enjoy working with me. My students are happier. I'm happier. I'm moving forward. And to anyone with a disability, get your accommodations documented with your district. Do it on paper. Don't put yourself through what I went through. Seriously.